Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us.
So let's start by I'm going to ask you all how many of you here have heard that it is your metabolism that slows down as we age and that's why we gain weight? Show of hands or in the box.
You can give a little wave emoji, but I'm guessing that the majority of you have been told that because that's been really the science for decades until recently.
And those are two of the myths that we're going to bust in the next 45 minutes. So, Steve, why don't you share with everybody actually how we came to this? Like, what was one of the reasons why the impetus to the book?
Sure. Well, I'm the executive editor at AARP Magazine, AARP Bulletin, and I oversee all of our health and wellness coverage. And so when people have health and wellness questions, it's my inbox that gets flooded. And the number one question I get asked from readers, we have 38 million readers, and the number one question I hear is, "I used to be thin, now I'm not. What's going on? I eat the same as I always did. I exercise the same as I always did, but I keep gaining weight. Why?" And it turns out there's a science not only to why we gain weight as we age, but how we can reverse this trend. Now, as Heidi was mentioning earlier, like so many of you, when we started this book, she and I generally accepted that metabolism slows down at midlife. That's because that's what science believed, but it was based on a false set of beliefs. There wasn't really any scientific proof that metabolism slowed down. It was just assumed. When a researcher went and decided to actually prove this fact that everybody knew, he discovered something amazing, which is that metabolism doesn't slow down between the time we're in our early 20s and at least until we're into our early to mid 60s. Metabolism stays the same. So, weight gain through our 40s and accelerating into our 50s, it's not because of metabolism, it's because of something else.
So, one of the things that happens beginning midlife and beyond is that we begin to lose muscle. And we begin to lose muscle about 1%, a little less than 1% a year. And this is really important because actually, even beyond our weight, what's important about retaining our muscle is what really drives much of our health. And much of the diseases we think of that comes along with aging is really related to muscle or loss of muscle. So that muscle impacts our glucose sensitivity and our risk for diabetes. It affects our strength and so our functionality. It affects our bone health. The more muscle we have is related to actually our bone health. When we have muscle, it pulls on bone, and there's some crosstalk that goes between it. It's actually related. There's evidence that supports the more muscle we have, the lesser risk of Alzheimer's and better cognitive health. So again, it's really related to so many different things that go well beyond our weight.
And now think about it. If we're losing 1% of muscle every year, that's, between 5 and 10% every decade. Now, for those of you sitting at home, if you make a muscle, I can't see you, so don't worry about it, but if you were to make a muscle and feel that bicep right there, that represents about 5% of the muscle that is in your body. That means that every decade you're losing a bicep's worth of muscle. Between your 30s and the end of your 50s, you've lost both arms. That's why we begin to gain fat as we get older, because you could almost think of it as muscle and fat being in a constant battle. There, it's spy versus spy. Muscle hates fat, fat hates muscle. Muscle hate muscle, fat hates muscle because muscle burns more calories, because it helps to store blood sugar, because it helps to, propel our energy and help us move forward. Muscle hates fat because fat creates inflammation, and inflammation destroys muscle. So essentially, you're in a constant battle between these two. Your job, if you want to prevent age related weight gain, is to ensure that you have enough muscle to fight back against that fat.
So look, our bodies absolutely change as we age. We're not talking, there's body acceptance, and not everyone is eating the same as they did in their 20s. So it is a combination of many things. But ultimately, what does happen as we age is what's called anabolic resistance. We become resistant to maintaining and gaining muscle and utilizing the dietary protein we take in. So when my son, we all know this, when you're in your teens and you drink a glass of milk, all that 8 grams of protein goes toward building muscle, right? Right, these young kids, like, they're already like, you go, oh, you're so hunky, right? And they don't have to do much. But when we're older, we drink that glass of milk and our body goes, "Feh," right? They're like, you need to do more. It's not, our body needs more in order to press that muscle building button. We actually need 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal in order to reach that muscle build, to overcome that resistance. And that's very different than how people think when it comes to their meals. And so it's really important that we think about protein timing, not just how much protein we eat in a day, but how much protein we eat per meal in order to keep ourselves from losing muscle, overcoming this metabolic or anabolic resistance in order to maintain the muscle we have. And we'll look later about how combining that with movement is really, really, really key. So Steve, I'm going to pull up that slide and maybe you can talk us through the protein timing aspect of let's see, I'm just seeing it in different windows here. So let's do this, then we'll come back to some of the benefits again. Can you all see that?
It's cut off. It's a little bit cut off on the side. There, that's better. Yeah,
we
there
go.
you go.
There we go.
Okay.
So, as Heidi was explaining, our bodies become resistant to turning the protein in our diet into muscle. In order to overcome that, and that's the reason why we lose muscle as we age, and that leads to fat gain. So, in order to overcome that resistance, we need to up our protein intake per meal. So, women need to hit at least 25 grams of protein at every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Men need to hit about 30. And that's what presses that make muscle button and keeps our bodies from breaking down muscle faster than we build it back up. But if we look at the way that people typically eat, in fact, that's not what's happening. The average American only eats maybe 10 grams of protein for breakfast, right? So that's maybe you have a croissant and there's an egg involved or a little bit of ham, or maybe it's just
This is
coffee
JC.
with
There's no ham.
no ham.
Right?
That's right.
Maybe a little lox, but not enough.
Some lox, but not that much lox.
Right. A little more cream cheese than lox. So you want to switch that.
But the primary issue is that you're not eating enough. We typically, as Americans, don't eat that much protein at breakfast, right? We tend to have a small breakfast, skip breakfast if on occasion, maybe even something that's heart healthy that we think of as heart healthy, like a bowl of oatmeal, is only going to give you a few grams of protein. So we're not hitting that button. That means that we're starting the day off in muscle loss mode. At lunch, we get a little bit closer. We typically get close to that 25 to 30 grams. Maybe we're having a salad, but there's like some chicken in it, or maybe we're having some chicken soup or what have you. And then at dinner, we tend to go overboard. That's when we have the steak. That's when we have the roast chicken. That's when we have the fish fry. That's when we have um, that larger meal that tends to be protein and especially meat heavy. So we need to eat about 30 grams of protein a day, and we're already doing it. The problem is that we're eating 60% of our protein at dinner time and only about 10% at breakfast. So if we want to build muscle, protect muscle, prevent age-related muscle loss and weight gain, we need to spread that protein out throughout the day. And you'll see in the right-hand column, it's very simple. 30% of your daily protein intake in the morning, 30% at lunch, and 30% at dinner. That's the way to eat in order to protect that muscle and prevent age-related weight gain. And one more thing, because our bodies can only process maybe 30 to 40 grams of protein at a time, when we eat those giant meals at dinner, much of that protein can't be utilized
For
for
muscle building.
for muscle maintenance. So we're falling short at breakfast and we're being wasteful at dinner.
And I think the thing to really understand here that's important, and we get this question. I don't know if we want to show some. I don't think these really even illustrated as well, but it's sort of this idea again that even if you have 2 eggs, believe it or not, you're not really getting there. That it's you need to have like that omelet that has it's eating more. I think that's the thing that people are really surprised about is that when we talk about the whole body reset, this isn't a dietary, this isn't a diet, it's a dietary pattern. Really, even like the Mediterranean diet, which we all know and heard about as a dietary pattern. The thing about something like the Mediterranean diet is it doesn't address our needs as we get older. So we're all for the Mediterranean diet. Any dietary plan that you want to follow, the DASH diet, all of these diets that have good science behind them, you can still engage in whether you're vegetarian or you're a meat eater. That's up to you. It's about making sure you hit the protein needs that you need, because the protein needs that have been set for the dietary allowances don't take into account what our needs are as we age in this dietary pattern throughout the day, or protein timing. This is not a high protein diet. This is an adequate protein diet distributed appropriately throughout the day where your body can maximize its use in ways that actually we need. It's not just maximizing, it is what we need. When we fall short, we are not building that muscle. And I think that clarification is really important to understand. And we really are encouraging you to eat more, believe it or not. When you read the book, you'll realize that it's not restrictive in any way. We're encouraging you to eat more food. There are other nutrients that we need as we age beyond protein. We don't take in and utilize calcium in the same way, vitamin D, right? There are B12. So there are other nutrients as well. And we want you to have a nutrient rich diet that's filled with foods that will help to promote muscle. So there's the protein timing. And then Steve, do you want to talk a little bit more about fiber or fruits and vegetables and their role in helping muscle?
Sure. I mean, it's very interesting, but studies show that people who eat the most produce, meaning the most fruits and vegetables, maintain the most muscle as they get older. Now, why would that be? Because we were talking about, protein, muscle, everybody knows that. Well, remember what we said about fat creating inflammation and inflammation damaging muscle. Well, fruits and vegetables are packed with phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals, the various nutrients that help us reduce inflammation throughout our bodies. So as you eat a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, you're lowering inflammation. That is helping you protect muscle, which is why it's such an important aspect of any healthy dietary pattern. And throughout the whole body reset, we show you how to incorporate them into every meal.
And then even things like omega-3 fatty acids or healthy fats. People don't think of making sure to eat enough fat if they're concerned about their weight. Now, of course, I really focus most on your health and well-being. In addition to weight, weight is one aspect, but not all. It doesn't determine your whole well-being. But having adequate fat and the right type of fat, again, plays a role. And they're just learning. We don't even have this all teased out yet, but there seems to be a few ways in which it helps. One is that there seems to be a relationship, and I don't want to get too technical, but to the mitochondria of our cells, which are the energy systems of sort of that keep going. And as we age, they don't function as well. And so we want to keep them healthy. And this may again have to do with this anti-inflammation that fruits and vegetables have, as well as healthy fats have, back down to the cellular level. The other thing that fruits and vegetables offer beyond the nutrients is the fiber. And that fiber we're learning more and more. I'm sure you've all heard about probiotics and how important that is for our gut health, but prebiotics are also really important. So probiotics are those active cultures, right? They're active organisms and we want a variety, but they feed off of prebiotics. And the fiber is really that's found in vegetables and fruits and plant-based and whole grains and nuts and seeds. Those feed those probiotics in your system and keep our gut healthy. And all of that is our whole system is synergistic, and that helps with inflammation, anti-inflammation as well. I mean, it does so much. Our gut health we're learning more and more about, but it all works together to help us maintain our muscle and absorb the nutrients that we're taking in. So it really does go back to the protein timing, but not protein only. We want you to have these well-balanced meals. And I think well-balanced becomes very, it's like this watered down, we're like, yeah, well-balanced. But there's a reason, because each of these nutrients, each of these food groups are doing something for our bodies in very specific ways. And in this case, the focus on maintaining muscle. And the good news, and Steve is like the master of this, is that again, it's very flexible, right? This isn't like Tuesday, you have to eat tuna fish, right? This is like you can eat out. Steve, you want to give some examples of different places and ways and that the whole body reset is really flexible?
Sure. I mean, we created about 60 recipes that are found in the book that help you if you are very interested in cooking at home. We have no cook, we have all day cook, we have whip it up very quickly when the family comes over recipes. But we also wanted to create a program for real people who want to eat real food, who live in the real world. And sometimes the real world involves driving down the highway and feeling starving and seeing nothing but golden arches. So what we did is we went through all of the menus of the 30 most popular restaurants in America. That is fast food restaurants, is your sit-down restaurants from Chili's to Applebee's to TGI Fridays, your diners like Perkins or Denny's, you name it. You can, we set out some choices at each of these locations that you could eat that would fulfill the needs, the dietary needs of you at midlife. And it's super easy to simply pull through a drive-through and make an order based on the information in the book and be assured that you're fueling your body in a way that's going to help protect muscle and also do a lot more for you as well. I think that we identified 10 really very important health benefits provided by the whole body reset. And Heidi, if you can, do you want to throw that slide up there?
Yes, I will. I gotta bring it back up. Give me a moment. There we go. Huh. Hold on a second. For some reason,
why don't we just tell you about the health benefits?
I don't.
um, so one of the things we wanted to do to make sure this was as authoritative as possible is we reached out to health experts, not just around the country, but around the globe. People from places like the Global Council on Brain Health, the Cleveland Clinic, the Hospital for Special Surgery, a number of places, and reviewed the program through their very specific lenses. So we
Can you
knew we were doing
sorry.
something that was heart healthy and brain healthy and good for your bones and would otherwise be protective in every way. So
Can you
we've already talked about the importance of preventing and reversing age-related weight gain through protecting and building muscle. But the other things that this program will do will help to support and regulate the immune system, curtail age-related muscle loss, protect against the loss of mobility. Obviously, if you're stronger, you're going to be less frail and less likely to suffer a loss of mobility. Bolster cognitive function. The link between muscle maintenance and brain health is really significant and really interesting. Promote bone health, we discussed that a little bit. Cardiovascular health, people who have the most muscle as they age are least likely to suffer cardiovascular events. Stabilizes blood sugar and helps to prevent diabetes. The way we do that is because muscle stores extra glucose, which is what happens to food as it gets turned into blood sugar and then stored in your body. Your body can do three things with it. Your body can turn it into fat, it can burn off for energy, or it can store it in your muscles as glucose. The less muscle you have, the less storage you have, the bigger of a blood sugar problem you have. We also talked about improving general digestive health. Again, this is through the increase in fiber in the diet, and boost vitality and alertness and engagement. In fact, when we put together a test panel and asked real people to try this out, the thing that we heard that most surprised us, that we just weren't expecting, was people said, I have more energy, I feel more vital, I'm not getting those 3 p.m. slumps. And in my own personal experience, I will say that that's the thing that's stuck out to me the most is I don't have that like 2 to 3 o'clock doldrum time that for all of my career I've had. I'm like I shouldn't be paid between the hours of 2 and 4 because I can't do any work. And the whole
Don't.
body reset really helps to change that entirely.
So again, the goal is that 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal. And it's the fiber goal is 5 to 8 grams or more per meal. And then adding a snack to help get you through wherever that is, whether that's in the morning or that's in the afternoon, or you'd rather have a snack in the even in the evening. But we can talk about that because the other thing that's really popular and that I think is worth bringing up is all of the variations out there. You know, we live in this diet culture and we're bombarded with the fad of the day. And again, remember, this is really not a fad because this is a dietary pattern and it includes all foods. There's no restriction. There's lots of flexibility to choose the foods you like culturally or logistically, economically, all of that. Having said that, one of the popular diets out there right now is this intermittent diet. And I just hear so much about it, about intermittent fasting. And it takes on a lot of different forms, right? There are ones that are, it could be where you don't eat for a day, where you eat, but most of them is about eating in a window or a restricted window of time. And I think this is really important because it's very seductive. But there was a big study, there are two different studies, in fact, that really support what I'm about to say, where it looked at intermittent fasting or time restricted fasting compared calorically to the same amount of calories, but throughout the day without any restriction. And lo and behold, both groups lost similar amounts of weight, right? That it had to do with the amount of calories you were taking in. But what changed, and this is so important, when you lose weight, you lose fat and muscle. in any typical plan or any typical way that you lose, about 30% of your muscle is lost on a weight loss plan, which is hard won as we age. We don't want to lose muscle.
Heidi, just to clarify, of the weight that you lose on a weight loss plan,
Right.
typically 30% of that weight is muscle.
Correct. On an intermittent plan where you skipped breakfast, did this time restricted eating, 60% was from muscle.
Oh,
You didn't lose more fat, you lost more muscle. You might have lost the same amount of weight, but you lost more muscle. You don't want to lose muscle. We need muscle. We just explained all the reasons why we want to keep our muscle. So it is really important. And that brings us now to another aspect, which is to talk about activity and movement. And both are really important. So eating more protein is helpful, even if you don't move. But if you combine it with movement and specifically strength training, that is a combination that is a winner for us as we age. So strength training, and again, I grew up, it was all about the cardio. Cardio was king, right? Cardio, it was about, if you had sneakers, you could travel, you can run, get out, hit the pavement, get on that elliptical and go. And it was, and yes, cardiovascular activity is important for our health. However, not to the exclusion of even twice a week doing some strength training. So whether you're doing it at home or at a great place like at the JCC where you have wonderful trainers, you have a wonderful facility, you have access to somebody who can help you create a plan that you can do that's livable and workable, works with there really isn't anything, whether you have low back pain or knee pain or shoulder pain or elbow pain, that isn't going to benefit from movement and finding the right strength training program for you. And the investment of time, which is really only twice a week, not that you can't do more, but that's sort of the minimum, is I can't like emphasize it enough. So if you combine strength training with the whole body reset, we are talking maintaining your weight, maintaining your health, maintaining your function, maintaining your cognition. It is a win-win-win.
And I will say that there was a remarkable study that looked at combining protein timing, which is the type of eating we're talking about, with weight training among people in their 60s. And they found that when combining these two things, when combining weight training and protein timing, people in their 60s gained muscle at the same rate that people in their 20s did. So if you think that for some reason you might, that time has passed, I'm too old to get fit, I'm too old to build muscle, it's too hard. Studies show that that is in fact not what's going on. That by using protein timing, you can reverse the process by which you lose muscle, and you can start to actually build muscle at any age. And I will say personally, again, it's a test panel of one, but I was for many, many years a staffer at Men's Health. So I spent a lot of time in the gym back in the day. Since doing the whole body reset, I can lift more weight than I did when I was in my 30s and 40s. I'm 58 years old. So I can absolutely tell you that you can build both more muscle and more strength by combining protein timing with a weight training program.
And those studies, by the way, Steve, that you're talking about, actually, it has been shown that you can continue to gain muscle and respond to strength training into your 80s and 90s. Now, again, it's not the same as maybe when you're 20, but you do still see gains. It depends on where you're starting from, but our bodies never stop responding. That stimuli from exercise primes us to use the protein even more. So it's, again, really, it's really a great combination. So a few other things I wanted to point out was, we also in the book talk about dairy. We're dairy friendly. You don't have to have dairy. You can have dairy alternatives, but to recognize how easy and accessible and affordable it is. And there's, I don't want to get, again, too much into the weeds, but when we look at an amino acid profile or protein, like dairy has all of the amino acids and one particularly called leucine that is more abundant in in animal proteins than in plant-based. You can be plant-based and still get it, but you need a greater variety and a little bit more when you're plant-based. And leucine is like the spark plug that seems to help with muscle building. And so again, that's important to have throughout the day. And when you're thinking about your protein sources, to
Dairy is also, it's easier to get protein in the morning from dairy because there are options like cottage cheese and Greek yogurt, that are just simpler than, making a chicken dish for dinner or for breakfast rather. And also, dairy is also a primary source of calcium, which, if you're concerned about heart health and concerned about bone health, is essential. And as we get older, our bodies need more calcium.
and then having said that, if you just don't want dairy or you are vegetable based or vegan based, you can do a tofu scramble, right? So there is, but you do need to really pay attention to getting that protein in the morning. I'm trying to think if we kind of covered, do you think we left anything out? Shopping, one of your really great tip for the supermarket, Steve, being that I think that's one that everyone really enjoys, and then maybe we can open it up to questions.
Sure. So, as we said, we wanted to be real food for real people in the real world. And that includes cooking at home, that includes, foods you can eat out at restaurants. But at the same time, there are times when we need to buy things at the supermarket that are prepackaged, or at least ingredients that are prepackaged. And so it's very hard sometimes to go into the supermarket and understand what's going on with supermarket labels. Everything has these weird health claims. They're organic, they're artisanal, they're natural. What do those terms mean? And the advice here is really to forget about any word that's on the front of the package that you're buying when you're buying a food. Instead, turn it over and take a look at the back, where the nutritional statistics are, the dietary label, because everything you need to know is right there. And there's a very easy calculation you can do to understand whether a food is probably healthy for you or probably not healthy for you. Simply take a look at the protein grams that are listed on the label, and then take a look at the fiber grams that are listed on the label, and add those two numbers together. Now look at the number of sugar grams on the label. Chances are, if the protein plus fiber number is higher than the sugar number, you've probably got a healthy food. But if the sugar number is higher than protein plus fiber, probably not. And that's true. It works incredibly well with things like cereal. You're trying to pick a healthy cereal. You'd be shocked what percentage of cereals have more sugar than both protein and fiber combined. On the other hand, you can go and buy a dark chocolate bar, like an 80% chocolate bar, that actually does have more fiber and protein than sugar. It is actually a pretty healthy little addition. It's certainly a healthy snack. So having that tip on hand is going to be really helpful when making choices in the supermarket.
Okay, so good.
Yeah, so Heidi, I think that we'd love to open it up to questions, because we tend in our chats to get some very provocative and interesting questions. So
I don't want to.
So let's go to the gallery.
the
And
gallery, to the gallery.
to the gallery we go.
It's awkward
And
because we're getting into people's homes, but I will say for the first while, I had to figure out if Scott Siegel was like a real person helping, like what was that in the background? There's a person there, and it was flipping me out that your partner was like helping with, I don't know, was that a microphone or and then I realized that's not a real person. That took me a while.
yeah, So let's see what's in the chat. And then also you can unmute yourself or raise your hand and we can help unmute you so you can ask your questions. The chat, I think there was a link to the book on Amazon, and I don't believe there's a discount through this lecture unless you have something, Stephen or Heidi, where people buy the book directly from you. Otherwise, it's just on Amazon. Is that correct?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, and you'll find that prices. When the book first came out, it was pretty expensive and pretty hard to find because it just took off so fast. Today, the price is a little bit more reasonable on Amazon, so there's an opportunity to check it out without too much of an impact.
Okay, and I think Scott had raised his hand. Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
It's Shatner. That's Captain Kirk, by the way, back there. Stephen, thank you for doing this presentation. I grabbed the book. It's $14. I mean, I think that's well worth the opportunity to re-engage and hit the reset button on health. What my concern is always cholesterol, the good, the bad. You have some advice around how to make good choices so that we're not we're maintaining the arteries and everything is clear.
Well, first of all, it's such an individual thing. Diet, so much of our cholesterol is hereditary. So the first stop is obviously your conversation with your doctor and your conversation about what treatments are right for you. I think that in general, keeping your weight down and eating a diet that's more balanced is always going to be helpful. Heidi, I don't know if you have any specific thoughts on this program and how it might affect cholesterol.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, that's really hard to give a general recommendation for some, like not knowing your history or what you eat. But yes, in general, this is, you can be plant-based without being plant only. And so, our thoughts on which foods impact cholesterol, it's not just how much cholesterol is in a food. So that's really changed over the years in terms of understanding which foods impact your personal cholesterol levels and the subfragments of LDL, HDL, exercise helping bringing up that HDL, the ratio, looking at what your risk profile is in terms of family history, smoking, activity, alcohol use. So when you look at your risk, which is really the issue with cholesterol, it's blood pressure, it's looking at all of that because it's exponential. So I can't tell you specifically what your risk profile is, but what we include in the whole body reset is definitely heart healthy.
And real quick, I was going to ask one last thing. At the JCC a few years back, I took a class where they took us to Whole Foods Market when they were first opened in Newport, and they said, "Oh, we're going to take you to the vitamin section," and it was the fresh vegetables and fruit. I don't know if you are in your book, if you make recommendations about vitamins or those kind of choices.
Well, I agree with that assessment. The vitamin department is called the produce department. Research seems to show that when you take a nutrient out of the matrix of the food and try to distill it down into a supplement, it just doesn't seem to have the same efficacy. So in most cases, is a multivitamin going to be harmful? Probably not. Is it going to be helpful? There's not really any evidence that it will. There are certain nutrients that are very difficult to get. Vitamin D stands out among those because it's something that we don't typically get from food except in fortified dairy. So, and especially if you don't eat much dairy and you don't live near the equator.
They get a little more sunshine on the west.
Yeah. But vitamin D is probably one thing that makes sense. As we get older, calcium is something we also want to talk to our doctors about. and potentially vitamin B12, which is something that our bodies tend to have difficulty accessing as we get older. But in a lot of cases, it's really a conversation with your doctor.
Thank you.
Omega-3 fatty acids.
Any other questions? Let's see if
Well,
there's anything.
there are a couple questions in the chat.
Okay,
The first I would say is that there is no such thing as the Whole Body Reset Cookbook, but there are a lot of people trying to rip you off by creating what looks a lot like a Whole Body Reset cookbook. In fact, there's about 30 different books named Whole Body Reset something that didn't exist until we came out and hit the bestseller list. So you want to be really careful that you're talking about the book that Heidi and I collaborated on. And, people have bought books that turned out to be 40-page treatises on U.S.-Chinese relations. They turned out to be, there's one book out there that just takes our book and changes one word in every sentence to make it past the plagiarism filter on Amazon. And there's a lot of cookbooks that are just general cookbooks that they just took our name and put that name on. So it'd be really as with anything you buy on Amazon, you have to be very careful to make sure it is indeed what it claims to be.
and there is more to that question. Is there enough info in your book to help with menu creation?
You betcha. We have about 60 recipes in the book. You could, and I think we even have a 2-week, we have a 2-week menu that's comprised of recipes of foods you can buy straight out of the supermarket and restaurant foods. So we show you how you could one day, go to Starbucks for breakfast, go to Wendy's for lunch, and then make one of our meals at home for dinner. So there's quite an extensive, menu and recipe matrix in there.
And then there's lists that just show you if you want to just make your own, what are all the different foods that have protein and how much equals that. And the same thing with fiber, where is fiber found? And you could pick out the foods you like that are fiber rich to equal, the amounts that we're recommending. So, because again, you can follow, we show you a sample because I think it's helpful, but we by no means think that you need to follow our menu, because you might not like you might prefer chicken and it says steak, or you might want tofu and it says chicken, or whatever. So there's so much room here for you to personalize it, that you don't have to follow a very specific menu plan, but we do show it for illustration purposes and suggestions.
And again, to reiterate and just responding to one of the comments, for women, 25 grams of protein at all 3 meals, plus a little bit more at each snack. For men, 30 grams of protein at every meal, plus a little bit more with a snack. They're not exact numbers. If you're a ballerina, maybe you need a little bit less. If you're a linebacker, maybe you need a little bit more. But those are general good guidelines. And then we also had a question, Heidi, about the exercise program that we recommend. And I wonder if we didn't really talk about it other than just kind of generally weight training. And so I just wondered if you could go into a little bit more the conversation we had around exercise and what a good program might be.
Sure. So first of all, again, I do really think that it's wonderful to take advantage of the JCC there, because individualized is always best. But in general, it's moving more days than not. The general guidelines are 150 minutes a week of cardiovascular, or even 75 if it's a little bit more intense. So that means whether you're going for a walk for 30 minutes, or you're riding a bike, or you're, going for a hike. So be on the elliptical, whatever. And then 2 to 3 times a week of strength training, which is major muscle groups. And then if you really want to work on, we call these ones, the ones for looks, biceps and triceps, but you're really talking about squats, major muscle groups, or compound movement for your hips and your thighs and your chest and your back. And, but there's lots of different ways that could be. That could be working with weights and free weights and dumbbells. That could be working with machines. That could be working with bands. That could be working with your own body weight. You could do yoga or Pilates. There's so many really different options as we get older, including balance exercise, which doesn't feel like exercise. We're not sweating, but it does help. It has definitely been shown to incorporate balance exercises to help us reduce our risk of falls, which is different than muscle building. The focus of our book is on maintaining your muscle, and that's why we really want to make sure strength training is mentioned and highlighted. But an overall balanced exercise program includes that cardiovascular HIIT exercises, high intensity, that might be intimidating to some, and you don't have to do it, but to others, it's very time efficient and has been shown to be very effective. So there's no one, the truth is there's no one exercise or exercise plan, the same way there's no one, real dietary, diet plan you have to follow. It's incorporating these different aspects into something that works for you, moving more days than not, but really not just moving where it's only cardiovascular, but making sure you get some resistance or strength training in that at least twice a week. That investment of effort and time will be returned to you, in great magnitude. I hope that helps answer the question.
And as
Yeah.
Heidi says, focus on major muscle groups. You get a lot more bang from burning on your butt than you do on your biceps.
So I don't know if you can see this. I've shown this before. It's kind of hard in here to show what a squat looks like. When you're standing up from a chair. I don't think I could go far back enough to see it. Where you're just standing up and sitting down. That's called a squat, right? That's your independence. That's your independence exercise. Your ability to stand up, whether you would do it with weights or not, but you're just that squat of standing up from a chair, sitting back down, standing up is the difference of, think about this, as you get older, being able to maintain your independence. If you can't get up off a toilet, you can't take care of yourself. And so maintaining those muscles, that also allows you to climb stairs. I might want to climb a mountain. You might want to climb stairs. It's all individual what we need, but it's functional activity is what's so very important. And doing strength training helps you with your functional ability. I've said this so many times. I'm going to say it again here. For me, I sat in a presentation once in school, and it just struck me, or at a conference. And it's that what I do now predicts my vitality in 10 years from now. So when I'm not motivated today to get moving, I think of my future self, and it motivates me to get off the couch and get moving.
This has been great advice. I really appreciate it. Anybody else have any questions or nothing else in the chat?
Well, we want to thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to share our work with you all, and wish you just the best as you try to, hopefully you'll read the book, you'll incorporate the ideas and the suggestions, and you will see the difference. This isn't something, this is, maintaining muscle is over time. I think you could feel better like pretty immediately, but maintaining muscle takes diligence of our patterns. But again, the end result is so worth it.